I'm going to install Node-RED onto my Raspberry Pi 4B and then give a quick overview of Node-RED. Node-RED is likely already installed, but also just as likely to be quite out of date. To install Node-RED cleanly, open a web browser and use your favorite search engine to search for Node-RED install. So go ahead and open a web browser. I prefer Google. And we're going to look for Node-RED install. And you see right down here, Raspberry Pi is the second one. So I'll go ahead and click on that. So what I'm looking for is nodered.org/docs/getting-started/Raspberry Pi. So I know this is the right link, so I'll go ahead and click on it. And right here in this box is the command that we want to use to install Node-RED. So I'm just going to highlight it and copy it. And I'll then open up a terminal and paste this command into the terminal. All right, I'll go ahead and press enter. Are you sure you really want to do this? Yes, I'm sure. Would you like to install the Pi specific nodes? Yes, I'm sure. All right, this is going to take a little while to run, but you can see what it's going to do is remove old versions of Node-RED as well as Node.js, and then do a clean install, and then clean up a bit. While we wait, I'll talk a little bit about Node-RED. In case you're not familiar with Node-RED, it is, according to the homepage, quote, low-code programming for event-driven applications, end quote. That's a mouthful for sure, but you essentially drag and drop visual representations of programming concepts and commands called nodes, and link them together to form a program or flow. The term event-driven simply means that the programs wait on something to happen and then does something. It's not your typical write some code and then run it. Here you program something to react to something that interacts with the computer and then does something. I'll admit it's a little awkward at first, but once you get the hang of it, it's really quite powerful and a whole lot of fun to use. I'll speed up the rest of the installation process so we can move on. Okay, the installation's finished. On my Raspberry Pi, I want to configure Node-RED to start when the Pi boots. And to do that, if we just scroll down this page a little bit, we'll see here, auto start on boot. If you want Node-RED to run when the Pi is turned on or rebooted, you can enable the service to auto start by running this command. So I'm going to take this command, I'm going to copy it, and then paste it into the terminal. And there. Now Node-RED is. Once Node-RED has been updated, the shortcut on the Pi menu no longer works. To remove it, we'll click on the Pi, and then Preferences, and then Main Menu Editor. Click on Programming, and then Node-RED, and we'll just delete it. And then click on OK. So now that we've got Node-RED set to auto start on boot, we'll go ahead and start it for the first time. And there it goes. So you can see here that the server is now running at http://127.0.0.1/1880, otherwise known as localhost. So as you can see, Node-RED itself doesn't have a GUI. It's not a program you start and then start interacting with. It starts this service, and then we need to use a web browser to point to Node-RED in order to start actually programming with it. So over here in this web browser, I'm going to start a new tab, and I'm going to type in localhost :1880. Actually, let's put an HTTP here. I'll wait for this to load up. And there's our Node-RED. I'll go ahead and maximize this window. The palette on the left contains all of the initial nodes, but we can and will install more in later videos. You can see that out of the box there's quite a few different nodes that we can use, including at the very bottom some Raspberry Pi specific nodes. The workspace in the center of the screen is where we design our flows, which is Node-RED's verbiage for our program. So let's go ahead and run through a quick initial program. We're going to add the inject flow, which you can see here injects a message into a flow either manually or at regular intervals. So we're going to click on this and drag it out. And then we're also going to add a debug node. So we'll drag this one out. Now you'll notice that there's these blue dots, and all that means is that we haven't deployed it yet. We're still initially configuring this. Once we get done, we hit deploy, and then these blue dots will go away, letting us know that it's been deployed. So the next step is we're going to go into this inject node, double click it, and that'll bring up the properties. So we can name it something. We'll just call it inject. And there's a couple things that it can do. We could add more if we want, but really there's just one thing I want to do. And I'm going to want to say that the message payload is going to be a string. And of course we'll do hello world. Once I have that set, click done. And then wire this together so that what happens in the inject node then gets transferred on to the next node, which in this case is the debug. Now to see what's in the debug, these little icons across the top here, we'll click on the debug messages so we can see what appears here. So now that we've got this all set, we'll click on deploy. And now, like this said, we can manually inject a message, and we do that by clicking this button. So I clicked on eject, and now we can see here that the hello world message has come across. So to give a little more detail about the data that goes from one node to the next, if we take a closer look at this inject node, we'll see this message payload. And it's a string. It can be a lot of different things, but in this case we set it up to be a string that's hello world. So the way Node-RED works is there's actually a packet of data that resides in this node. And once this node does something, it then sends out that packet of data on this wire, and then it feeds into the next node. The next node then takes that packet of data, processes it, and does something with it. So that's it for this video. Thank you very much for watching. Stay creative.